Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on our show, we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and an aging population. Just again, I want to thank everybody for all their support. Many of you, again, going online, either to our website at agingboomers.com or on iTunes, iHeartRadio. And more of you are going right on our free app on your Android or iPhone. Just if you're not doing it that way, it's pretty easy. Just go in and type in the Aging Boomers, and you could download the free app and keep up to date on all of our shows. I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for senior living and receiving proper care. So whether it's in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. And any of the advisors would be happy to give you just some free consultation and help you, just point you in the right direction with proper resources if necessary. We're bringing back Valerie Richards, who was with us not too long ago during the holidays, and we're happy to have Valerie back. Valerie provides education for the community to improve understanding and interactions with the person with dementia, and coaching for families to help them maintain their relationships in a positive way while providing the best care for their loved one through the challenging transitions of aging and progressive dementia. She is a certified Advance Planning Facilitator and works with individuals and families to discuss and document end-of-life preferences. A personal family journey has inspired Valerie's passion to help others manage life transitions through education and coaching. So, Valerie, welcome back to the Aging Boomers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Frank. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I am going to ask you, and I know I think we talked about it last time, as mentioned in your introduction, kind of the catalyst and you getting involved with this was experience that you had with your father. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love you to share again, that experience and kind of what led you into doing what you're doing now.
Sure. And actually, I went through Alzheimer's through end of life with my father and father-in-law, and my dear mother-in-law was under care for about the last 5 years of her life after a major stroke and major aphasia. She couldn't get words out, difficulty communicating or comprehending, all of that as well, and dependent on care. So as a family, both in my immediate family as well as my in-law side, we have gone through all of the transitions, be they all of the living transitions through dementia, the discontinuing driving, the change in residence, all of that, to all of the transitions in residential care and the many levels of care that are needed as a person declines with some of these diseases. So it's been quite a journey, and I went through that experience. I've been studying now aging issues and dementia for over 10 years, and it's been the reason I'm so passionate about the family coaching is a lot because of my own experience. I've modeled my coaching with families much after what I did in my own family, as well as the recognition of we have blended families out there now. We have many different circumstances around families, different relationships. Family dysfunction is a spectrum, not a yes or no in families. Also, we have dysfunction and trust issues that might come up in some families more so than in others, and all of those affect how we can manage, I think, these life transitions with our loved one going through a decline or a progressive dementia.
So, Valerie, and with your experience in dealing with families, I think it's important for people to just have a general understanding of maybe some of the misconceptions of dementia or myths, whatever you want to call it. In your experience, can you share some of those that I think will be helpful to our listeners, especially those that haven't gone through it before with a family member?
Sure, and I think I'll start with the stigma around dementia in our society. We have a real stigma around not just, frankly, dementia, but the aged people in our society. We now today, actually, the fear of dementia is higher than the fear of cancer, if you ask older folks what their biggest fears are in terms of health. And as we know from many decades ago, cancer was not talked about because people thought there was nothing we could do about it. We couldn't cure it or slow it or anything at that point. And dementia is much the same way now in terms of Alzheimer's and these progressive dementias, that people think there's nothing they can do. So when I think about the stigma in society affects how families, individuals with the diseases, as well as all of us in the community approach this, and how affects how we deal with it. And one thing that families definitely do is they tend to delay a diagnosis. And part of it is around this idea and this myth, shall we say, that really, why should I get a diagnosis? Nothing can be done about this anyway. And in reality, an early diagnosis is very important to improve the quality of life for the person with dementia, as well as the caregiver and the family. So while we may not have medications that can slow or stop this disease, we do have a lot of understanding about how to interact with a person with dementia, about making their living environment safe and stimulating for them. And also from the side of the caregiver and the family, we have many resources like support groups and resources in the communities like yours and like home care and respite services that can make a huge difference in the health of the caregiver and the family in going through this journey. So there's a lot we can do about living better with dementia. And really that's what it all comes down to is, we've got the stigma and this confusion and this all of these things that make us delay action here. And if we increase our understanding around dementia and we plan earlier and make those plans for the future, we empower families and people with dementia to have a better life experience through it, as well as, frankly, we as a community use the resources that we have more efficiently. And we all know that there are huge costs to the journey of progressive dementia. Financial costs, certainly, around care, but also emotional costs and the suffering and difficulties that the caregivers and the families have as well. So yeah. I think getting that early diagnosis is something that we really need to do to address that myth of, it really doesn't matter. Research has shown and studies show that, for instance, caregivers who reach out to support groups and who do talk to people and realize that they are not alone completely in this experience and so forth, have a reduction in their overall rate of depression. They rebound from depression faster if they experience it. Their stress level tends to be less, and they do a better job of making plans for the future and living less in crisis through this journey. So I think again, there's a lot we can do to live better with this disease.
I was going to ask you what you were talking about. Being educated is extremely important. Do you think a lot of family members, family caregivers, try to kind of take it on themselves and saying, "Hey, I promised Mom I would take care of her, and I'm going to take care of her," and they think that it's like they think, well, maybe I could take care of her like she's got the flu. I mean, it's a much
right.
There's a tremendous amount of education that's needed to do things in the proper way. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that there's a lot of misunderstandings around what a diagnosis of dementia even means. If the family feels they even received a clear diagnosis of dementia, that's one of the biggest challenges for families is getting a proper diagnosis and then understanding it. But definitely that dementia caregiver just they tell us all the time that we never realized what demand there is in being a dementia caregiver, and the idea of this is a 24/7 experience. Most of us in our lives are not necessarily trained to be a caregiver. We never learned about it, as well as the fact that certainly not a caregiver of our own spouse, for instance, or our parent. So it's a real challenge for them to understand that diagnosis, realize this is a long-haul situation, and that you're going to need some help. The other aspect to that is we hear from caregivers that all the time that the friends and family who came around when they first started having issues seem to not come around as much anymore, and so they really do end up feeling like they are on their own. And particularly if you're in a spousal situation, it's very demanding, or a live-in situation with that person. And so the health of the caregiver ends up being compromised, and they ultimately report that they feel like they aren't doing a good job for their person with dementia in their caregiving because they become impatient or they start failing themselves. You touched on something also, Frank, related to the promises that are made. And we certainly know the old promise, between a couple, we promised we'd never, go into a nursing home or whatever, or move from our home. But we do need to really evaluate that as we go and realize that the goal here is to provide the best environment for the individual and make them, provide it's real hard to do in a home environment. So I think when those promises are made, it does get really difficult for people in the long run when they realize that, they can't handle the individual in a home environment, and now a change needs to be made. So it's real important as we go through this journey as a family to be open-minded, to set some goals for that individual, and reassess as we move in the journey to make sure that it's the best situation for that person to meet those goals, as well as ourselves as a caregiver. The perspective that I present around this tends to be that, from the family's perspective, as a caregiver, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes I'm living crisis to crisis. I'm grieving my losses. I have a little bit of depression around the situation, and I'm under constant demand. So as caregivers, we tend to withdraw and isolate, as well as the person with dementia tends to isolate themselves. And from an outside perspective, the community and our friends and so forth tend to feel like they're not sure when to contact us. They don't want to interfere with the day. They're afraid they'll say the wrong thing, and so much of the time those people want to help, but they don't know how. And so friends and the community tend to do nothing and sometimes even avoid contact with the person with dementia as well as the caregiver. So
what
I
do you
really
suggest?
encourage both sides of that fence, so to speak, to be aware of that, and as a caregiver, be willing to give a specific request if somebody offers help, be ready to say what somebody can do for them or ask for help, and from a community and a friend standpoint, to be ready to act and do what we can within our limitations to support that caregiver.
Yeah. What do you suggest to family members, family caregivers? Because I think you said something extremely important in it, and I see it all the time, where possibly even close friends, other family members tend to disappear. They don't show up anymore because they're uncomfortable in the situation. They don't know how to act in the situation. Like you said, they feel they may say the wrong thing. So what do you suggest to the families to help educate those people so they don't disappear?
Yeah, and I think education is so key in this, and that's the other piece to what I do in my work is I'm always trying to educate at all levels in the community so that we do empower people to take action here, whether they're the person with dementia or the family or that friend as you're talking about. So I think as a family, the biggest thing is to share the diagnosis with other people in your life and involve them and stay connected with people. We, as I said, caregivers tend to withdraw because we're so busy and we're, there's just stress and so much demand. So any way you can share that diagnosis with others, stay involved with your friends and your organizations, churches, people who are involved in a church environment, for instance. My experience is, again, those communities really want to help people out, but they don't know what to do. And so sharing some information with them, asking them to go to an educational event, again, asking for help and engaging them is I think, the key. And as a community, we can do many things in terms of encouraging education at our organizations and in our workplaces, becoming more friendly. Dementia-friendly is the term now, but becoming more welcoming for people with dementia and their caregivers, and encouraging people with dementia and families to engage services. And if we know about what resources and support services are out there, we can then help the families, and the families can share that information with others as well. So that's really key. Education empowers us to live better with this.
Yeah. I'd like to tell you something that I often suggest to families, and I'd love you to comment on it, is, when the friends and family come over to visit, or they see mom or dad, the person with dementia, and let's just say it's not real late stage, let's just say they're still communicating and all of that, that we tend to say to someone, so how's it going? What'd you do yesterday? Or did you go see a movie? What was the movie about? Any of that. And I usually advise to let friends know, don't bring up the things that were just very recent. Talk about the things that maybe happened years ago. And I think they get a little better results there. So I'd like you to just comment on that.
Yeah, and we definitely, the key with communicating with a person with dementia is, we want to meet them where and when they are. As you're saying, Frank, they might, in their memory, not be really circulating thoughts about the recent events. But if you put a little seed in front of them related to a picture or a thought about work or about school or about family, Frank, okay.
Hey, we lost you, so we'll continue here where we left off. So
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll let you continue.
Okay, so where we were is talking about interacting with the person with dementia. And so as I said, meeting them where they are and when they are, just suggesting a topic or and seeing where the conversation goes. Many times they will pick up on something and start talking about memories that, in the case of Alzheimer's particularly, or memory-related dementias, they will maybe bring back memories that you've never heard, and that can be a real gift to family. A little bit about interacting with the person with dementia, too, and this goes back to, if we talk about misperceptions or myths around this, so much of the time when people think about a diagnosis of dementia, they imagine the person in bed, white sheets, rigid limbs, not communicating, all of that. And it's really important to keep in mind when somebody gets a diagnosis of dementia, and we are getting those diagnoses earlier now, they may have a long time before they ever are at that stage, if ever, frankly, because with end-of-life choices, they may or may not ever get to that sort of a condition. So don't assume that a person with dementia is not able to talk, communicate, and all of that. And we really, the important thing is to think about even if a person's cognitive abilities have been affected, they still have feelings. They still many times have a lot of intellect and can have very high-level conversations or about information. So, early stage, keep in mind that they very much can be quite communicative, and they will interact, and they love to talk and socialize. And that's really important to keep them healthy. In the moderate stage of dementia, we want to make sure that, again, we're meeting them where and when they are, and that they are feeling safe in their environment, and they look comfortable. And, again, interaction is so important. As the person is more later stage, they tend to communicate more through their senses and through gestures and facial, expressions and so forth. So, you can still find ways to connect with them and to be with them. And music, prayer, reading aloud, movement, dancing, all of these things are ways to interact with people all through dementia. And I think, when you asked about the myths and the things that we think about around dementia, Frank, I think of, we kind of get early on it's the diagnosis, then it's living with this disease, and then we get into end of life. And that's something that, again, we need to take action and plan for the future for our loved ones. And having discussions about the end of life helps a lot in the living with dementia. If we know what our loved ones' end-of-life wishes are and we've discussed that and we're comfortable with that, then sometimes the decision about where they're going to live, about what sort of services we use, becomes more clear to us. And we can also help facilitate their preferences for end-of-life as well. So it's important not to think of the person completely incapacitated and not communicating. They've got a lot of life left, and that's what we want to make the most of.
Yeah. I know, before we came on the air, we spoke, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, because I think it's an important point that you even said to me that many times families just wait too long, and when you're contacted, it's tough to really help them fully, because that person can be, so far along that they're on hospice. So what are just suggestions you have to families, and just, I guess, preparing, planning a little better with someone with dementia in their family? And we unfortunately only have a couple minutes left, but I'll let you kind of end with that.
Sure. It's so important to act, and sooner than later. We hear over and over from caregivers down the road that we just waited too long to get help, to access services. The direct caregivers suffered in their health, and they declined. As I said, the spousal situation, that's the most obvious. You also get into a crisis situation a lot more. So the big thing is to act sooner than later, seek out resources, share your diagnosis with others, and utilize those services and access the support. And in my family coaching, that's what it's all about. It's sitting down, assessing the overall life situation and the big picture for that person with dementia, deciding and thinking about what are the goals for this person, and therefore what are our priorities, and then how can we make that happen. So things like home safety, things like respite for that live-in caregiver, all of these services that are out there that can help extend time in the home or keep that person in the home. And then you mentioned hospice. Hospice is always something that, again, back to those end-of-life decisions, if we've had those discussions and we kind of know what the person's wishes are, then we can better plan for that journey. And it really is a gift to your family to have those discussions ahead. So when it's appropriate to use the services, and you can make it as best as possible for the individual. So I think a little bit of planning, and for me, I've been out there coaching now for a few years, families through this journey, and it always takes such a long time for them to get engaged, even though they know they should do it. Kind of like financial planning and that sort of thing in our lives. We know we should do it, we put it off, but you know what? A little bit of planning today and a little bit of investment in time and money into that planning today can put off some of the more high expense and difficult transitions in the future, like moving to residential care, for instance. So it's really important to take action and share the diagnosis and get use of those services. And the other aspect to that is sometimes families also say later, gee, we didn't even know that service existed, or that resource was there. So that's what another person like me working with families can do, is bring them to those services as an option.
So Valerie, share with everybody how they can get a hold of you, your website. Why don't you go ahead and share with everybody that?
Sure. My website is familieswithdementia.com or familieswithalzheimers.com, and my phone number is 651-210-7866. And my overall goals, we hopefully we can facilitate with that family or the people closest to the individual with dementia the best quality of life for them through the journey, and also maintain the well-being in the family. And again, get out there and get information to the community. So I do presentations and on all topics related to dementia and Alzheimer's and aging issues and end of life.
Great. Valerie Richards. Check it out, familieswithdementia.com. As always, thank you for joining us. Great information. Sorry about the little bit of a technical issue there. We lost you for a moment, but
It happens. Thank you, Frank.
It happens. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, everybody, for joining us as well on the Aging Boomers. Just be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.